What's up, YouTube? Here we go again. Today we're back for another mock draft on the channel. Now, this is a final mock draft prior to the NFL free agency, which starts tomorrow at 12 p.m., where teams are allowed to actually talk to players, and then they can officially sign on Thursday. So it's basically they're just committing and whatnot. But let's get into it. Pick one. Now we have some trades to report here. The big one being Maxx Crosby does get dealt, and that gives the Raiders another first-round pick 14. Very good. Gives them a good position to get receiver. Maybe Tate, maybe Lemon, maybe freaking Tyson too. I noticed Lemon's rank did go down a little bit. It looks like PFF did change theirs considerably. But let's get right into it here with Fernando Mendoza. I mean, there's not another there's not another player they'll be taking in one. There's no other quarterback in contention at all, really. Pick two with the Jets. I'm going to stick with my pick. I still think it's Arvell Reese. I don't think there's any question about that one. I still just don't see another player jumping the board. If they got rid of Brees, I think Love could have been in play. Bain and Bailey, probably not. Tackle isn't out of play. Caleb Downs would probably not be a good pick, considering the ACL worry. Now at 3, I'm going to go with Moaga again. I do think Love is definitely in play, but they did restructure James Conner's contract today, which kind of makes me think it's not going to be him. Love, that is. I think Sonny Styles is in play. I think Downs is in play. I think Delane's in play. They need a quarterback, though. There really isn't one that they're going to be taking there. I think Moaga just makes the most sense. It's not a team that has a lot of offensive needs, but the biggest two would be offensive line and quarterback, and they could get the best offensive tackle by Moaga. So, pick 4 with the Tennessee Titans. Now, the Titans are an interesting team because we don't know what they're going to do in free agency. They have a ton of money. Again, Rondell Robinson. Apparently, they love the fit right there. That would be an awesome signing for Cam Ward. I do think receiver is in play here, but I'm going to stick with David Bailey because I do think David Bailey's the pick here. I think Robert Saleh would absolutely love to have him with Jeffrey Simmons. It would just make this defense so good. And the weakest part of this defense last year was this pass rush. So add him. Obviously they trade for Jermaine Johnson too. I think this is just a match made in heaven, really. With either Bailey or Bain, I think either one could be good. I think Bailey's just less flawed at this moment in time. Now, the Giants, if Wan'Dale Robinson leaves, we don't know this yet, obviously, but this does open the door for a receiver here, and I do think Carnell Tate makes a ton of sense. I do think Lemon makes even more sense. Again, it's kind of that guy who could play anywhere and could really stretch the field, and I think he's just a more dynamic player than Tate. Love has been really highly talked about as well. I picked him last time on this mock. I don't really know with the Giants. Now, Downs is the best player available, but obviously the ACL is questionable. Do they go Love? Do they go Tate? We don't really know. We don't know what Wan'Dale Robinson is going to do yet, so it's really up to interpretation. I think Jeremiah Love is probably still going to be the pick there. I'm going to stick with it because I do think they do really want a running back, and apparently Kenneth Walker is out of their price range, so that definitely gets Love's chances even higher. Pick 6 with the Browns. Now, the Browns are a weird one. They really need offense. They do really need offense. And all over. I still think Tate's the pick here. I think, Fano and Freeling, definitely in play. I think Caleb Downs, Mansour Delane could be there too. But I think Tate makes a lot of sense. They need a wide receiver 1. Whoever's going to play quarterback needs a better receiver. Jerry Jeudy as your wide receiver 1 again will not be helpful. Let's get a better guy here, and I think that's just kind of the best player available based on their needs. I don't think Styles makes sense. I don't think Bain makes sense. Bain makes a little more sense than Styles, I guess, but I think Downs is probably the most likely if they're not going to go Carnell Tate or the offensive tackles, because those are their 2 biggest positions of need. With the Washington Commanders, I'm going to go with Sonny Styles or Ruben Bain. who knows what they're going to do, really. This is a team that has a lot of problems on the defensive side. I think Sonny Styles is probably more likely after Bane's, stock is kind of plummeted, considerably. He was mocked at 1 and 2, and now he's down, 7 to 10. I said last week he could definitely fall down to that pick 10 spot. And really, who takes him down here when you get to it? Obviously, Dallas is the ideal. Miami would be a good fit too. Obviously, Stan State there. With pick 8, I still think the Saints are going to take Mekhi Lemon. I think this is just still the match made in heaven. I think he fits well with every player on that offense, and I think he would just be awesome on the Saints. He is the Amon-Ra St. Brown clone. I don't worry about his personality or whatever that shit is. Piss me off. Like his one concern is his size, and he plays like it doesn't matter. He really does, and it's similar to Amon-Ra, but he really gets up and gets the ball still. So Kansas City, I do think Kansas City is in play for wide receiver. I do think they're in play for Ruben Bain. I think Caleb Downs makes sense, but I think Mansour Delane does make sense too. I mean, Thieneman you could take, I guess, too, if you really want to push it. I think Downs is the pick though that I'm going to go with this week. I think talent-wise, he's the best player in the draft. Injury risk-wise, who knows where he's going to go. And safety is a hard position to draft. Obviously, I think the last safety I could think of that was a top 10 pick was a Chief. I think it was Eric Berry back in 2011, I believe, and he was pretty freaking good. So hopefully they, Downs work. Well, I don't want the Chiefs to be good, but Downs is a pretty likable player. Now the Bengals at 10. Ruben Bain's probably the pick. I think Mansour Delane also in play. I think Thieneman makes sense. You could go offensive line. Javon McCoy even. I mean, it's up to interpretation, I think, more so here. It's just a matter of, do you take the best player available, which is Delane, or the safest player available, which is Delane, or do you take Ruben Bain, who has more concern? I think you'd probably just take Delane. I think Delane just makes a ton of sense. I think the secondary was pretty weak this year, and I think he's the best corner right now. I mean, we'll see if McCoy participates in the pro day. Probably not happening, but who knows? Pick 11 with Miami. I think Ruben Bain makes a ton of sense. I do. I think offensive tackle could make sense. I think Sadiq makes sense. I think Jermon McCoy also does make a ton of sense here too. But I'm going to go with Ruben Bain at pick number 11. I think they're going off best player available. I think they're going to go with the guy who they know is going to be good. They know, I think Hafley was a really good defensive coordinator the last 2 years for the Packers. I think he could get the best out of these players, and I think this is just a good spot for Ruben Bain to land if he falls that far. Now at 12, I think no doubt about it, you got to go corner. Like I say every time, corner, edge, those are the two positions of need for Dallas. You're trying to replace Micah Parsons. You're trying to add to cornerbacks. You really haven't had luck at corner. Really, in a minute. I mean, Diggs and Bland were okay, but they were pretty overrated based off the interception rate they had, which I think most people saw through, but apparently Jerry Jones did not. Now, the Rams. Now, I talked about this, on Twitter with some people where I said I think the Rams could definitely take offensive tackle. I think wide receiver makes sense as well. I don't think Sadiq's in play, but it is Thieneman and it is Spencer Fano. I think those are the big two for them, and I think you already added to the secondary. I do think they brought back Cam Curl as well. I think Spencer Fano was the pick with Rob Havenstein retiring. Now, this is an interesting one. The Las Vegas Raiders. Obviously, they get this trade for 2 firsts for Max Crosby. They're all-pro, future Hall of Famer. Thank fuck he's out of the division. Obviously, they take Mendoza. Obviously, they Brock Bowers. Obviously, they have all these other things. Now, I think that Jordan Tyson makes a lot of sense here. I really do. But this is a team that needs something more than anything, and I think that is offensive line, and I think that is, a guy like Monroe Freeling or Ione. Either one, I think, would be super beneficial to this team with who really had like a bottom three, bottom five offensive line in the league this past year, and I think this just makes a ton of sense. Now, moving on to pick 15 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I've had Sadiq there a couple times. Might go back to him again. There's not a huge market on who they could take here. I do think I'm gonna go Ione just because if you watch the Bucks this past year, their offensive line was fucking terrible. They were getting killed, like I'm thinking, the Texans game. They were scrapping through games early on. Their offensive line really couldn't help Baker at all. And when he got hurt, they couldn't protect him anymore. And it really just affected why their season went downhill. And I think Ione is, he's a really good prospect. He is the best scorer in the class, one of the best offensive linemen in the class, and this is just great, great fit for him. Now, the Jets at 16. I think the pick is Caleb Banks. I do think Banks makes a ton of sense. You're replacing Quinnen Williams' production. Obviously, you bring in T'Vondre Sweat too, which would be nice next to Banks. Obviously, you have Reese in this mock too, and then you'd have Will McDonald. I think that's a fucking great front four. Get Banks up there. I think this is perfect. Banks had a really good combine as well. And with the Lions at 17, I'm going to be going with. This is a hard one, to be honest. Mesidor technically would be the best player available based off their needs. You could go Thieneman based on, their need for a safety. Kinda. I don't think Kirby Joseph's that good. Brian Branch, people think is pretty overrated. Could you go Sadiq? Obviously, Laporta's in year 3 or 4. I believe it's 3. And he hasn't been as good these past 2 years. I actually think he's going to year 4 now, which is fucking crazy. But Tyson, probably not. McNeil, Warren, Falk. I think Terrell's probably the most likely pick here if they wouldn't go Thieneman or CJ Allen. I think those are probably the two that I would circle. Maybe. Thieneman's obviously the best player available too. But it's kind of not what they need. They kind of need corner more so than that. And I think Terrell makes sense. Like I've said before, I think he's a really good prospect. And I just think the Lions need corners. Obviously, Terrion Arnold was hurt and not that good. And DJ Reed was not that good. Just makes a lot of sense. Now, the Vikings, I think, defensive tackle, like Cade McDonald, like I believe last week, would make a ton of sense. And he'd be an awesome player for them to get. But Dylan Thieneman to replace Harrison Smith and, Cam Bynum obviously left in free agency the year before. This would be a perfect guy to get. He has really improved his stock. He was a mid-second round pick at the end of the year, and now he's sitting at a mid-first, which is fucking crazy. Now, the Panthers. The Panthers, I'm going to go with CJ Allen again. I think this is just a good fit. I think this is a team that needs linebacker. They really haven't had great linebacker production since Luke Kuechly. CJ Allen would be an awesome guy to get on this team. Now, the Cowboys, obviously, we scroll back up. They did take Jermon McCoy for us. And here I'm going to go with, you go with one of the 3 edge rushers. Because you're filling the other need, and I think Mesidor makes sense. Like I said last time, I think he fits what the Cowboys want to do. Jerry Jones seems to want to go for it this year, next year. He seems to want to push to win. They're clearing a lot of cap. They're doing a lot of good shit. I like what I'm seeing. I think this is a team that definitely could have an interesting offseason. I think there's a lot of, help on the defensive side that needs to happen. Like corner, even if you draft a corner, I think you still need to sign one or two, and safety as well, linebacker. These are questionable positions. Their defense is really bad. I know Matt Eberflus is terrible, but this is a team that needs help, and they need a lot of it defensively. Now, at 21, I'm going to go with Jordan Tyson, I think. You could make the case for Blake Miller. I think Omar Cooper makes sense. They moved down Boston and KC, but I think Tyson makes sense if he falls here. I think he's just way too good of a talent. all the talents there. It's just whether he can stay on the field, and him with DK would also help him considerably. Um, as a rookie and young player, I do think he has more upside than DK. I think he can push that top 5, top 10 wide receiver, but it all depends on who's going to play quarterback too. Their only quarterback on the roster, I believe, is Will Howard, which not going to cut it currently. Yeah, no, not going to cut it at all. Now, the Chargers at 22, the guy I want to take for them, and the guy I have been taking consistently, is not here, Ione. But I'm not going to be taking Kenyon Sadiq like, Daniel Jeremiah did that one time. Fuck no. I think Caden Proctor makes a ton of sense here. I think Cade McDonald makes a ton of sense here. I think McNeil Warren could be interesting too. But I'm going to go with Caden Proctor because I think Caden Proctor could play inside, and I think he will play inside. And I think this team, obviously, they signed Biasdez. They have Joe Alt. They have Rashawn Slater. They have Pipkins, who was decent last year too. I think Proctor inside would be awesome. I think this is just a perfect fit. Mike McDaniel, they bring in Alec Ingold today too, so they've definitely helped. They're helping Herbert. That seems to be what they're trying to do already with two, a fullback and a center, which were two positions that probably could have been improved quite a bit last year. Now, I'm going to go Sadiq here. This is the perfect fit for Sadiq. I think Denver would be awesome too, but I think Kenyon Sadiq in Philly would be unbelievable. I think AJ Brown's still going to get traded, especially after Crosby does for 2 firsts. I think that just helps the league want to trade for him more. And I just think this should be just a perfect spot for him. Obviously, Goddard's a free agent. I think he's going to leave. Pick 24, I am going to go with Blake Miller. I think, you want to look at needs. You could go Simpson. You could go Newsmeyer, theoretically. I think tackle you have to go with. If you don't do that, you need to help the offensive line or just the offensive general. Obviously, you take Cornell Tate earlier as well to help the offense. And you bring in Todd Monken, who's a very good offensive mind, and I think this is just a good matchup here and a good fit. Now the Bears, I'm between two things. McNeil Warren makes a lot of sense, but I think Cade McDonald does make more sense. I think this is a team that really struggled on the defensive line. I mean, anyone could tell you that. Anyone could see that. I think this is just a perfect one there. I'm gonna go with Omar Cooper here with the Bills. I think this is just a good fit. I think, obviously DJ Moore's there. I like KC there too, but I think Omar Cooper's definitely improved his stock. You could really go Cooper and KC. I mean, I had Cooper at 27, I believe, last week. And with the Niners, I'm going to go with McNeil Warren. I think this is a team that really lacked at safety without Hufanga, and McNeil Warren is a first-round talent right now, so why not? Now the Rams. Oh, that's not the Rams. That's the Texans. The Texans here, I'm going to go with Caleb Lomu. I think Caleb Lomu is still a first-round talent. I think this is just a good fit. This is also just a team that really needs offensive line in general. This is just kind of a necessity more than anything. They probably have other needs, and there are obviously better players available. But this is just kind of what you need to do here at pick 28. And now the Chiefs. I do think, obviously we scroll back up, we can see who the Chiefs took. Caleb Downs. I think you could go a defensive player, but I also think it's more realistic that you go maybe wide receiver. I think, defensive back could definitely be improved. I think, Brandon Cisse. I think Colton Hood's in play. I think, Folk, Cowell, Parker, any of these guys, really. I don't think Conception makes as much sense just because you already have Worthy, who's a very similar player, even though he's not as good. But I think, Pregnon makes a ton of sense. That's who I'm going to go with. I think offensive line's probably the play here. Obviously, you want to add a secondary player. I just don't know if they would take Hood over the offensive lineman. Obviously, Jawan Taylor's gone, but this is an offensive line that really, really struggled last year. And I think that's just kind of what you need to focus on here. Now, the Broncos at 30. I think Denzel Boston could be in play. KC I would absolutely love. But I don't know if they like him that much. I think Stowers does make a lot of sense. He fits the fold, you know, and I honestly do think they could take him at 30. I know it's a little bit of a reach rankings wise, but I think the Broncos don't have a lot of needs defensively, especially. I mean, they just took a corner last year. It would be kind of stupid to take another offensive line. They don't really need. Um, Jacob Rodriguez would be sick, but I don't think he's a first round talent. 31 with the Pats, though. I'm going to go with Keldrick Falk. It's basically a throw up between the three top guys, but the Pats do need defensive end really, really bad. This is kind of just defensive end that's really struggled since probably Kyle Van Noy left, maybe. And I just think this is just, again, just a good fit, just a good, situation for a player to go in. Obviously, the defensive line and the defense itself is really good, so it's probably going to be easy to adjust, you know, playing across Harold Landry, playing next to Milton Williams. I think they cut Barmore. Um, and yeah, 32 with the Seahawks. Now, I want to say I do think there's one player that's a sneaky pick here with the Seahawks, and that is Jadarian. Oh my God, I can't speak. Jadarian Price. I think Jadarian Price is really undervalued. I think he's a really good talent. I think he had a really good combine too. Mike Washington obviously did as well, but Kenneth Walker looks to be leaving. We don't know if they're going to sign any running back. This could change. I could look like an idiot if they re-sign Kenneth Walker or they sign some other running back, and that's not going to happen. But for now, I'm going to say Jadarian Price is the pick. I know it's a little, crazy, but this is a team that does need running back, and I do really think Jadarian Price is a first-round talent. I think he could go first round. I think he could go early second. You know, he played behind Love, I know, but he didn't get to shine as much, and when he did, he was really, really good. But that's all from me on this one. Hopefully, free agency goes well. Hopefully, the Broncos sign Kenneth Walker and Nakobe Dean. Those are my two biggest hopes. And I'll see y'all next time. Peace.